Every single day, we're bombarded with headlines from the Middle East, right? But what about the costs behind those headlines? The ones that are piling up day after day? That's what we're diving into today. Not just the conflict, but this deep regional crisis that's creating consequences that could last for generations. Okay, so this quote, it really frames everything we're about to talk about. A cascading, multi-theater, slow-motion implosion. That's powerful stuff, because this isn't just one war, is it? No, it's a multi-theater crisis. We're talking Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Sudan, and the wider Iran-Israel conflict. The source material we're looking at calls it a full-on systemic collapse that's impacting millions of people. So let's break down what that actually means.
All right, first up, we're going to go beyond the daily news cycle and look at how these conflicts are literally hollowing out the region's future from the inside out. And from there, we'll hit the most tangible cost of all, the money, the pure economic hemorrhage. And let me tell you, the numbers behind this financial bleeding, they're just staggering, almost hard to wrap your head around.
Let's start with a big, stark number. For Israel, this war is costing an estimated $200 million every single day. Think about that. The total projected cost, it could hit $69 billion by the end of 2025. That's enough to push its budget deficit to nearly 7% of its entire economy.
Now, let's pivot and look at the situation in the primary conflict zone. Gaza's economy, well, it hasn't just shrunk, it's basically collapsed. We're talking about a contraction of 86%. 86. It means economic activity has come to a virtual standstill.
And you know, this stuff doesn't stay contained. The impact spreads, and it spreads fast. Just look at the Red Sea. The attacks there have crippled one of the most vital trade arteries on the planet. Trade through the Suez Canal dropped by 50% in early 2024. That's a perfect example of how a regional conflict becomes everyone's problem, like, overnight.
This right here, this is what you could call the invisible tax of war. Because it's not just governments footing the bill. It's ordinary people every single day. Look at this inflation. It is just soaring. We're seeing it ravage household budgets in Gaza, in Sudan, and Iran. It makes just surviving, just getting by, an absolutely immense struggle.
So here's what's so critical to understand. This kind of asymmetry. The political instability, yeah, that's concentrated right there in the region. But the economic pain, that gets exported to the rest of us, especially if something happens in the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption there sends energy prices through the roof for the entire world, and it's Asian economies that would get hit the hardest.
Okay, so we've talked about money, but now let's shift to something you can't just print more of, something far more permanent. And that's the generational tragedy, the destruction of human potential.
I mean, just look at this number. 97%. That's how many of Gaza's schools are damaged or completely destroyed. This is so much bigger than just rebuilding some buildings. This is the near total erasure of the very infrastructure of learning for an entire generation of kids.
And behind every one of those damaged schools are people. These aren't just statistics. This is an irreplaceable loss of life, of talent. Thousands of students, hundreds of teachers and staff, all gone. You're not just losing today's learners, you're losing the very people who are supposed to teach the next generation.
And that's why this phrase from the source material just hits so hard. It's not a temporary setback. It's a deep, deep wound, one that's going to shape the entire region's future for decades to come.
You know, war doesn't just destroy things, it pushes people out. Think about this. Around 100,000 skilled professionals have had to flee Gaza. Another 90,000 have left Israel. This is a classic brain drain. It rips out the very people you need to rebuild, the doctors, the engineers, the entrepreneurs. What you're left with is this massive vacuum of talent right when you need it most.
And all of this, it leads us to the core, and frankly, the most sobering part of this whole analysis, the idea of an unrecoverable loss. And why this time? Well, it might really be different.
So check this out. It's a really key finding from the IMF. In most places around the world, after a conflict ends, the economies, they eventually bounce back. It might take a while, but they recover. But in the Middle East, that often just doesn't happen. It's not a temporary dip. It's more like a permanent wound to their development, a lasting blow to the economic future of every single person.
And if you want to put that lack of recovery into perspective, just look at these UN estimates for rebuilding Gaza. Best case scenario, 16 years. Worst case, 80 years. They're saying just clearing the debris could take 20 years. Let that sink in. This isn't a project, it's a multi-generational task. It's a job that will literally outlive many of the people who are suffering through this right now. So, what does this all boil down to? 3 hard realities that define the new landscape. First, that idea of the Gulf as a safe haven for investment, shattered. Second, those official timelines for rebuilding, nobody really believes them. They seem wildly optimistic. And third, the global economy is still basically a hostage to the world's most dangerous energy choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the analysis comes to this conclusion. The real loss, the thing you can never get back, isn't just the money or the buildings. It's time. Irreplaceable time for development. Lost human potential. And maybe saddest of all, a lost chance for an entire generation to even know what peace feels like. So what is the true cost when the most valuable thing you lose is time? And that brings us to this final, really sobering thought. With every single day this conflict goes on, the math just gets worse. Recovery gets pushed further and further into a future that's harder and harder to imagine. And it forces us to ask a really tough question. What if some of these losses are just too big to ever get back?